Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Amia Murray. This is episode 3 of our health series, Baltimore's Fight Against Drug Addiction. Today's episode is Turning Pain into Purpose, a personal journey through addiction and recovery. We're focused on a live experience of substance use, how it begins, how it shapes everyday life, and most importantly, how recovery is possible. I'm honored to sit down with someone who embodies strength, transparency, and transformation, Miriam Whitehead. Miriam is a poet, a motivational speaker, an author, a playwright, and a producer, whose story continues to inspire people across Baltimore. Miriam, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to start by beginning. Can you just share a little bit about your journey and your background?
Yes, hi, my name is Miriam Whitehead. I am a devout Christian, and I was brought up with a deacon. My father was a deacon, and my mom, she had got her doctorate in theology, master's in psychology, and marital counseling, professor at Coppin, the whole nine. And sister has her doctorate, brother's a preacher. And then I was that person who questioned everything and didn't understand, why this, why that. So I questioned a lot of things. And I had 3 kids out of wedlock. And of course, then the church didn't approve. And that's okay because, sometimes when you don't understand what a gift is and you're so focused on rules instead of relationship, this is what happens. But anyway, that's me. But I've learned to write. I've learned to tap into God's purpose for me. And but before then, I decided one day that crack might be a great idea. And I started smoking crack. And it was that lifestyle came with a lot of things that I have never experienced in life. It came with a lot of sexual perversity. It came with robbing and stealing and killing and, not on my part. I just witnessed a lot. It came with death. It came with a lot of things. And I got down to 97 pounds.
Wow. How
And
old were you when you was first introduced to substance use?
I knew about it, all my life. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I might have smoked a blunt here and there, Newports, some hash. But, Coke or heroin or something, that was something I wasn't going to touch. But in my state of mind at the time, I thought, it was something that I could try and I could, walk away from when I felt like it.
Right.
And I was a year in. Like I said, I noticed that I was 97 pounds, went from a size 16 to a size 8. It didn't come with instructions. So I didn't know what I was supposed to eat
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So needless to say, it was a disappointment to my family, but they didn't cut me off. They kept praying for me, and and I didn't think anything was okay. I was 97 pounds trying to still, I'm sorry, thinking I was still looking good in a 1X, which
Yes.
was, yeah, I mean,
Clothes was
it
falling off.
yeah, tells your mind, some crazy things. Substance use will tell your mind some crazy things. And the enemy will have you. I treated my kids badly. I was neglecting my children. Am I answering your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I was neglecting my children. Um, I was neglecting my apartment. I was neglecting life. I was neglecting me. My love for myself had dwindled, but I still love my kids in my way. And I thought my way was a good way, and it wasn't. So the social worker came and told me that I had been reported by someone for, not treating my kids right because I would take my daughter to kindergarten in the morning and she had half a day. And I was supposed to pick her up at 12. And here it was 2 a.m. and I still hadn't picked her up. And I knew I was supposed to pick her up, but because I was getting high, it made me feel bad that I hadn't picked her up yet. So instead of going to pick her up, I just got higher, or if that's a thing. I just kept smoking in my addiction. My addiction said, someone else will take care of it. And my mother, she would go get her. So one day a social worker, like I said, took my kids, and when they took them, it was like, but they're my life. It's, one of the main reasons why I'm living, my children. I love them. I love them. I love them. And I, someone's taking something that I love, why should I live if you take my children?
Exactly.
So I had, that was my low point.
And yeah, every journey has a turning point. That moment when something shifts inside of you. What was the moment you realized you needed to make a change?
When they took my children.
When they took your children, that was the last thing that,
Yeah, that was my low point. Because
yeah,
there's a low that you get to that you realize,
something has to be
"Yeah,
done.
Miriam, what are you doing? So
Exactly.
I uh I started noticing myself. I started noticing my living environment. I started noticing this was I got into my first fight. I had been attacked for the first time in my life. Some man had, attacked me, and this was the first time I was known for carrying knives.
Mm,
And particular time, I left my knife on the table, saying, "I'm just going around the corner." And this man, I saw him coming and he attacked me. And in my size, I was still able to, he landed. We started tussling. I don't think he was ready for strength. I think
mm,
he was ready for someone he could just, overtake, but it didn't happen that way. And
right.
so I managed to flip over with my face towards the ground while he was beating, just taking his fists and just, hitting me and punching my head. And I had my face down to the ground with my ears, my hands covering my
Like trying
ears.
to cover your head.
Yes, and because he was, "Where's the money? Where's the money?" Like that, and I was like, "You're not gonna find it. It's so buried.
Wow.
It's kind of chilly outside. I have layers of clothes on, and I was, trying to, and someone walked past and yelled, 'Get off of her!' Hey, and he ran off. I had, I was in my apartment one day. I'm just talking about instances that happened.
Yeah. Well, once you realized that you needed to change, what made recovery possible for you?
Okay, okay. So what I did was I cried out to God. And I said, "Lord," I said, I need you to take this away from me. I'm ready to just let it go.
You knew it
And
was bad for you.
in faith, I walked it out.
That's
And
amazing.
I never looked back. Now I'm trying to tell you that deliverance is possible.
Yeah.
The social worker told me that if I didn't go to rehab, I couldn't see my kids. I couldn't even be around them. And I was willing to take that route. I sacrificed being around my kids because I was so determined that rehab was not for me
Yes.
because of my training, my upbringing in Christianity. I knew that I could walk this out, and I'm trying to tell
God,
this
yeah.
man who was a devout Muslim, about Jesus Christ. And of course, he didn't want to hear. He didn't want to hear about it. So, I talked about deliverance to him, and he kept saying, "You need to go to rehab, for recovery." And I said, "I'm not in recovery. I'm delivered." I
Exactly.
said, "What's the difference?" And someone asked me, "What's the difference?" I said, "In recovery, it's an ongoing thing, but my Bible tells me that I'm a new creature. you know, all things have passed away, and behold, all things are new. So that means my not just my walk is new, my talk is new, my lungs are new, my body parts are new, my private parts are new, my sight is new, my perspective is new.
Yeah.
So I had walked into places and there were drugs all over the table, and I had no want for them. I had no need for them. I wasn't triggered or anything.
Yeah, your
You know, when
mindset
you,
changed.
I'm sorry.
I said your mindset changed towards any type
Yeah,
of drugs.
yeah. If you call yourself being in recovery, you know, you try to stay away from those things. You avoid them. But it's not that I don't avoid, it's just that, you know, drugs are everywhere. You just never know where, you know, drugs are going to be.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not a trigger because that deliverance, you know, if you're still thinking, if you have a situation, a problem, a circumstance, and you think about a substance to relax it, forget it, suppress it, you know, that's recovery. That's you know, rehabilitation, and that's your 12 steps thing. But whenever that problem arises, I go to God in prayer, and that's my deliverance.
Yes.
That's who I look to. That's who that's what I chase after.
It was
I chase after
your faith in
for,
God.
for a long time. He chased after me.
Hmm.
So you know, now I chase after him.
That's amazing. You were just so open about your past. What gave you the courage to share your story publicly and step into advocacy?
I, I've always been this way.
You
I've
haven't?
al I've always been an advocate,
Oh.
even though at one time in my life I was a bully, you know, because of, because of, you know, when you know who you are, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a, like 5'9".
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, but I learned to take up for that person. So I know what a bully, I know a bully's mentality. And then when I found that I was HIV positive, that threw me because I found out 3 years into my marriage. So I
Wow.
wanted to make sure my husband was good, my kids were good, because I found out, I thought maybe he gave it to me. And they said, you know, the doctor said, when did you meet him? And I said, you know, 1996. They said, you had it before, way before then.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was me, and to this day he's still negative. He's still negative. My children are
Oh,
negative.
wow.
You know,
That's amazing.
I even talked to my grandkids. I wrote a children's book called My Grandma's HIV Positive. It's not really available now because it's old and medicines and, you
Mhm.
know, things have been upgraded. So I
Yeah,
wrote a
things
new
have
book.
changed.
Yes. So I wrote a new one called My Me and HIV. And when I can, I will let you know when it's available. It's finished, so I just need, you know, some funding to get it into print, and you know what? God's will, God's bill. So when he's ready for it to be out there, you know, he'll make a way so I can get it out there. Because people need to know that there's life after diagnosis.
Yes.
And that's what I talk about. And I've always been bold and not uh, mind not having a problem telling people, you know, you can make this, you can make it, you can live this, because of it's like a testimony.
Your own
And you know,
personal
the
story.
Bible, they are freed, you know, by the blood of the Lamb and their testimonies. I probably didn't quote that right, but they were freed by their testimonies. Basically, is what they were saying.
Yeah.
So I'm free. I tell people vulnerability is my ray of sunshine. You know, if it wasn't for HIV, HIV was one of the best things that happened to me. And I say that because it made me start paying attention to me. It made me start loving me. It made me start taking care of me. It made me
Appreciating
realize
yourself more.
that habits, you know, you need to change. It made me take that look in the mirror and say, look, you're gonna live this or you're gonna die. Which one? And I chose my mother said either you're gonna take the medicine and believe God, or you're gonna or don't take the medicine and believe God. And I believe that, you know, everybody doesn't have listening skills. You know, so therefore we have God does, you know, he makes therapists. Everyone doesn't have the ability to cut without making someone you know, bleed out. So these are surgical skills. So I believe like Rain is a resource. He provides gifts and people to help other people. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna take this medicine and believe God. Because I asked him, I said, why? I said, can you remove this? Can you take this away? He said, I can heal anything. He said, but I'm also a preserver. He said, and you can walk this out. He said, you can let them label you whatever you want, but whose report are you going to believe? So I stand fast on, I may have it, but look what God is doing through me
Yes.
with this.
And it doesn't define who you are as a person.
Doesn't, because I turned HIV, I turned the meaning around. Yes, HIV means human immunodeficiency virus, and AIDS means acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. But to me, HIV means his internal vision, which means the vision that he's placed in me. This is what I focus on. And AIDS stands for, and I don't surrender.
That's a good one.
Now, God had me redo that word, because I'm not going to surrender to, an illness. But at one point, I surrendered to a lot of things. So I got a book that's coming out, and I did surrender. When I say, I surrendered to, crack. I surrendered to, a lot of snares and plots and ploys of the enemy, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, but God.
And when people talk about addiction, stigma is always a part of the problem. What misconceptions about addiction do you wish people understood more or better?
Say, I don't tell a lot. I watch how I tell people in the medical field about my addiction, because they don't know how to let it go.
Right.
They think, I don't know, this misconception, this falsehood about once an addict, always an addict. It's not true.
Hmm.
It's not true. So that's one of the stigmas I'm always fighting against. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
That you're not defined as just an addict because that's how your past was labeled as. That
Right,
people
right.
change,
So,
people
right.
give new experience to life and decide that they don't
Yeah.
want to look back at that.
Well, yeah, because sometimes people see me from, they
Years ago.
remember my
Mhm.
actions or how I was in the past, and they
Exactly.
see a new person, but it's like, you want me to prove to you that my thinking is different. But, and I'm not made that way. I'm not made to prove myself to you. You want to know that I've changed, read a book that it's about 5 of them on Amazon,
Yes.
just, come have a conversation with me. And I can tell you, you'll know that, no, I'm not even a functioning, you know, I might be addicted to a little bit of shopping.
Well, Miriam, thank you so much for your honesty, your courage, and your willingness to share such a powerful story. Your journey is a reminder that recovery is possible and no one past defines their future.
Right. Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome. This has been episode 3 of Baltimore's fight against drug addiction. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is help, hope, and healing available. Thank you all for listening.